Hey, this is Ramon, Channel South before, and I've had a rough few days and few nights. But, see that up there? That is Don Quixote. That has nothing to do with me. That actually is one of my father's heroes. Don Quixote used to, with his buddy, uh, he would go and he would fight windmills. Why? Because he thought they were dragons. So it sounds like a pretty pathetic guy, right? Except in Spain, where the story was written, uh, I guess we could call it a myth or a fable, although it's a super long myth about the size of Moby Dick. Uh, he's considered a hero. And in a lot of Hispanic cultures, he's considered a hero. Why? Well, because he believed in an ideal and he went out and tried to change the world to become that ideal. What am I talking about? I have been listening to a lot of religious debates, and I've been talking religion lately on this channel, specifically about Genesis. And I think I want to stop at Genesis, is what I decided. I'm going to read up to the end of Genesis. I'll do those videos, and then from there I'm going to skip on over to either probably The Art of War by Sun Tzu, or maybe the Tao Te Ching. Possibly even Marcus Aurelius, because I love Marcus Aurelius. But while listening to all these videos, and there's some stuff like from James White that I want to respond to, but something very interesting from my perspective, from my faith. The priest. I'm about to disagree with some priest here. Which is fine, by the way, as long as it's not a doctrinal teaching from the church. Catholics are allowed to disagree with priests all they want. Relax, people. Violence. Let's talk about violence. Specifically, let's talk about martial arts and boxing, because that's what this channel is all about. At least until I change it to a writing channel eventually. So, martial arts and boxing. Human dignity. The argument seems to be, from priests, that boxing and martial arts denigrates human dignity because it is a form of violence. And here's my argument about that, which is thou shalt not kill. I know what you're saying. What? No one's killing people? Sometimes accidents do happen in the ring, but yeah, not murder, right? Not murder. Accidents. Thou shalt not kill is very different than thou shalt not murder. And most Catholics interpret thou shalt not kill as thou shalt not murder. I'm going somewhere. Violence as a sport. Violence as a hobby, as a pursuit of a greater good. See, there are a lot of religious Catholics who are boxers, who are martial artists. Kind of interesting, right? Their priests don't seem to have a problem with it. Interesting there too. Why not? Well, the argument here is that the amount of damage done to the brain of the fighter is a type of mutilation. The type of damage done to the other opponent is a type of denigration. The type of thrill that the audience gets is a regression back to the gladiatorial games. But here's something a lot of people don't know about the gladiatorial games. You don't kill your gladiators because you spent years training them. It is very rare that gladiators actually would get the thumbs down, which actually wasn't a thumbs down, it's more like a thumbs to the neck. That's a very rare thing because you want to protect those guys. In fact, gladiatorial games were a way for many slaves to gain their freedom. Which, if you know the whole Spartacus thing, you're like, what? Yeah, no. Most people went into gladiatorial games to gain their freedom. There was a track to freedom. Most people know that from like movies, right? But it was also a way for people who were in great debt as Romans to get out of debt to whoever they're in debt to. So, well, what am I saying? Well, the gladiatorial guys were heroes, modern heroes to the people who watch them. It's kind of like professional wrestling. Professional wrestling and gladiatorial games have a lot more in common than martial arts and gladiatorial games. Because in gladiatorial games, there was a predetermined winner and loser. And you were kind of reenacting certain famous battles or famous scenes from history. Well, martial arts is about pushing yourself to the limit. So are there fighters who are a little too prideful? Definitely. Are there promoters who take advantage of the people they represent? Of course. Are there audience members who don't understand the metaphor of the violence and the catharsis that they're releasing through watching such violence? Definitely. But it is not the same type of violence. And I'm going to use another easy metaphor. I teach martial arts. Out of those students, about 75% of them are women. Only about 25 of my students have ever been guys. Only 25. I've had other clients who are like for weightlifting and for meditation and yoga and Tai Chi, all that stuff, definitely guys. But the martial arts, I've actually mostly taught women. So what does that mean? That means that I have to spar with them to teach them certain moves, to teach them certain blocks. But when I say this to someone who says, well, women aren't as capable as men, a guy should never, do anything like that with a woman, and then I say, well, but I teach women martial arts. They go, well, that's different. I go, what do you mean that's different? Well, yeah, you're teaching them how to protect themselves. But yeah, I'm teaching them how to protect themselves, sure. But it's different. There's a positive aspect to it. Now, I'm not saying the positive aspect undoes the negative aspect. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not getting into a theological debate here. What I'm saying here is that martial arts as a sport or as a hobby or as a pursuit is not violence for violence sake. Just as a soldier who kills in war is not committing the same kind of sin as someone who commits a murder. And at some point I do want to talk about sin before I get out of all the religious stuff, because that's an interesting conversation. But more to the point, Don Quixote. He pursued an ideal that other people thought was stupid. And yet he inspired a nation and inspired my father. Martial artists can inspire people. Great fighters can inspire people. And their faith in God can be expressed through their fighting. And I know that seems weird. And I know that to a priest who practices peace, that might seem contradictory. But there are priests who love to box. And there are priests who love martial arts. So it is possible to be a fighter and be religious. It is possible to be a good fighter and be a good Catholic. So I just wanted to mention that. I know that very last part is going to throw some people off because some people listening to this aren't Catholic. But I'm responding to priest. So, Anyway, peace, like, subscribe, enjoy. Go read Don Quixote. It's a good book. It's long. Very long.